My name is Harrison Caldwell. I am 72 years old, a retired architect living in Seattle. And until 20 minutes ago, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. I have a net worth of $24.5 million, a legacy built on steel and glass, and a beautiful wife 38 years my junior who claimed she was carrying my miracle child. But as I sat in the dark ultrasound room watching the doctor's hands begin to shake violently, I realized I wasn't lucky. I was a target. At my wife's ultrasound appointment, the doctor's hands started shaking uncontrollably. He turned to me, his face drained of all color, and whispered, "Sir, you need to leave immediately and call a lawyer." I replied, "Is something wrong with the baby?" He leaned in closer, his voice trembling. "The baby is fine, Harrison, because there is no baby, but what I am seeing on this screen tells me you are in grave danger." When he showed me the screen, I didn't see a heartbeat. I saw the metal clips of a surgery performed years ago. I left without a word and I never looked back. Before I tell you how I survived the woman who tried to murder me for my fortune, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. It brings comfort to this old man to know I am not alone. The air in the examination room at Virginia Mason Hospital was frigid, smelling sharply of rubbing alcohol and latex. It was a smell that usually made me uneasy, but today I tried to focus on the warmth of Melanie's hand in mine. She was lying back on the paper-covered exam table, her shirt pulled up to reveal her slightly rounded belly. Her skin was pale, clammy to the touch. I thought it was just the nerves of a first-time mother. I squeezed her hand gently. "It is going to be fine, darling," I whispered, trying to sound more confident than I felt. At 72, the idea of fatherhood was both terrifying and exhilarating. When Melanie told me the news 3 months ago, I wept. I thought it was a gift from God, a second chance after my first wife passed away. I ignored the whispers of my friends at the country club. I ignored the looks of pity from my former business partners. I wanted to believe. Melanie looked at me, her eyes wide and watery. "I just wanted us to go to the clinic in the suburbs." "Harry," she said, her voice tight, "they know me there. They are so gentle." I patted her hand. "I know, my love. But Dr. Evans is the chief of obstetrics here. He has been my friend for 40 years. He delivered my nieces. If anyone is going to bring a Caldwell heir into the world, it is going to be him. I want the best for you." She forced a smile, but I noticed her leg was bouncing nervously under the sheet. The door opened and Dr. Evans walked in. He was a tall man with silver hair and the steady, reassuring demeanor of a surgeon who had seen everything. He greeted me with a firm handshake, but I noticed he gave Melanie a searching, clinical look. "Harrison, good to see you," he said, snapping on a pair of blue gloves. "And this must be Melanie. Let us take a look at this little miracle, shall we?" He dimmed the lights, plunging the room into a heavy, intimate twilight. The machine hummed to life, the screen casting a ghostly blue glow on our faces. Melanie flinched as he applied the cold, conductive gel to her abdomen. "Just relax, Mrs. Caldwell," Evans said softly. He pressed the transducer probe against her skin and began to slide it around. I leaned forward, squinting at the monitor. I was looking for that tiny rhythmic flicker, the heartbeat that would prove to the world that I was not just a foolish old man with a young wife, but a father again. I was looking for life. The room was silent save for the hum of the ventilation system. Seconds ticked by, then a minute. Dr. Evans was not speaking. Usually this is the part where the doctor points out the head, the limbs, the strong heart rate. But Evans was silent. He squinted at the screen, then adjusted his glasses. He pressed a few buttons on the console, increasing the contrast. Then he stopped moving the probe. I saw his hand freeze. Then a tremor started in his fingers. It traveled up his wrist to his forearm. The man who had performed thousands of delicate surgeries was shaking. "Is everything all right, Evans?" I asked, my throat going dry. Is the heartbeat hard to find? He didn't answer me immediately. He slowly took his hand off the probe, leaving it resting on Melanie's stomach. He turned his chair so his back was to Melanie, facing only me. In the blue light of the monitor, he looked like he had seen a ghost. His forehead was beaded with sweat. Harrison? He said, his voice so low it was barely a breath. I need you to listen to me very carefully. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. What is it? Is the baby? Did we lose it? Melanie started to sob. Oh God, something is wrong. I told you we should have gone to my clinic. This machine is broken. Dr. Evans ignored her completely. He leaned in, gripping my knee with a strength that hurt. Harrison, you need to stand up. You need to walk out of this room, get into your car, and call your lawyer, Mr. Pendergast, right now. Do not go home. Do not pass. Go. Just leave. I blinked, confused. My brain could not process the urgency in his tone. Why I am not leaving my wife. If there is a medical emergency, there is no medical emergency. Harrison Evans cut me off, his voice hard, still, steel. There is a crime scene. He spun the monitor toward me. Look at this. I looked at the grainy black and white image. I saw the dark outline of the womb. It looked empty. No, not empty. There were strange bright white streaks across the image, reflecting the sound waves sharply. I don't understand, I stammered. Where is the baby? There is no baby, Harrison Evans said, pointing a shaking finger at the white streaks. And there never could be. Do you see these bright artifacts here and here? These are surgical clips, titanium lesion clips. I stared at him, the words floating in the air. Surgical clips. Your wife has had a tubal liation, Harrison Evans whispered. Her tubes were tied and cut years ago. It is physically impossible for her to conceive naturally. This pregnancy is a lie. I felt the blood drain from my face, leaving me dizzy. A lie. But she has a belly. She has morning sickness. I felt the baby kick. Evans shook his head sadly. Look at the lining of the uterus, Harrison. It is thick. Too thick. She is taking massive doses of synthetic hormones to mimic pregnancy symptoms. And Harrison, those hormones in the dosage required to fake a pregnancy, this convincing they can be toxic to anyone who comes in contact with them through sweat or saliva. The room started to spin. I looked past Evans to the woman lying on the table. Melanie had stopped crying. She was sitting up, pulling her shirt down her face, a mask of cold, calculating rage. The sweet, innocent girl I thought I married was gone. In her place was a stranger with eyes like ice. Dr. Evans grabbed my arm, shaking me out of my stupor. She is trying to kill you, Harrison. The stress, the hormones, the gaslighting. If you stay, you are a dead man. Go now. I stood up. My legs felt like lead, but the adrenaline was starting to kick in. I looked at Melanie one last time. She opened her mouth to speak, to spin another web of lies, to tell me the doctor was crazy, that he was jealous, that it was all a mistake. Harrison, honey, wait. She began, her voice pitching up into that fake sweet register. I didn't let her finish. I turned my back on the woman I had loved, the woman. I had rewritten my will for the woman who was slowly poisoning me to inherit $24 million. I walked to the door. Harrison. She screamed, the sweetness gone, replaced by a guttural shriek. If you walk out that door, you will regret it. I opened the door and stepped out into the bright, sterile hallway of the hospital. I didn't stop. I walked faster and faster, my breath coming in short gasps, until I burst out into the cool Seattle air. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers trembling as I dialed the number for Pendergast. Dr. Evans was right. There was no baby, but the trap had been set, and I had been living in it for months. As I reached my car, I saw Melanie running out of the hospital entrance, her face twisted in fury. but I was already locking the doors. The engine roared to life. I wasn't just driving away from a failed marriage. I was driving for my life. I reached my silver Bentley parked in the VIP lot of the hospital. My hands trembling so violently, I dropped my keys on the asphalt. The metallic clatter sounded like a gunshot in the quiet afternoon air. I scrambled to pick them up, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get in the car and drive until the gas tank ran dry. But my legs felt heavy, weighed down by the crushing reality of what I had just seen on that ultrasound screen. Surgical clips, a barren womb, a death sentence wrapped in a lie. Harrison, wait. Please, you have to listen to me. Melanie's voice pierced the air, shrill and desperate. I froze my hand gripping the door handle. I did not turn around immediately. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the shaking in my limbs. I had to be smart. Dr. Evans had told me to leave to call my lawyer, but I knew Melanie. If I drove away now without a word, she would spin a narrative before Clear's throat. I even reached the highway. She would tell the police I was having a mental breakdown. She would tell everyone I was dangerous. I turned slowly. Melanie was running toward me across the parking lot, her heels clicking frantically on the pavement. Tears were streaming down her face, ruining her perfect makeup, leaving black streaks of mascara running down her cheeks. She looked like the picture of a devastated young mother, terrified and confused. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar. "Harrison, stop!" she sobbed, grabbing my arm with a grip that was surprisingly strong. "You cannot just leave me there. You cannot believe that old fool over your own wife." I looked at her, searching for the woman I thought I loved. But all I saw was a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Why, Melanie?" I asked, my voice rasping. Dr. Evans is the best in his field. Why would he lie? Because he is senile. "Harrison?" she screamed, shaking my arm. "Did you see his hands?" He was shaking. He probably forgot to turn the machine on properly, or he was looking at the wrong setting. The machine is ancient, just like him. He is jealous, Harrison. He is jealous that you are happy, and he is old and miserable. She was gaslighting me, twisting reality right in front of my eyes. A part of me wanted to scream at her, to grab her shoulders, and shout that I saw the titanium clips, that I saw the undeniable proof of her sterility. I wanted to vomit. But then Evans's warning echoed in my mind. "She is trying to kill you. If I confronted her now, right here in this parking lot, what would she do? Would she hurt me? Would she stage an accident? I was 72 years old. She was 34 and desperate. I would not win a physical fight. I needed to play the long game. I needed to survive." I let my shoulders slump, feigning a sudden exhaustion that wasn't entirely fake. I rubbed my temples, squeezing my eyes shut, as if fighting off a migraine. "I don't know, Melanie," I stammered, injecting a tremor of confusion into my voice. It felt so real. The screen was blank. He seemed so sure. "He is crazy," she insisted, seeing my hesitation and pouncing on it like a predator. "He almost gave me a heart attack. You know how much stress hurts the baby." She stepped closer, invading my personal space. Her perfume, a scent I used to find intoxicating, now smelling like funeral leaves. She grabbed my hand, her palms clammy, and pulled it forcefully toward her stomach. "Feel him, Harrison." She whispered, her voice dropping to a desperate, intimate purr. "Ignore the machines. Ignore the old doctors. Trust your hands. Trust your flesh and blood. Feel our son." She pressed my palm against the fabric of her maternity blouse. I wanted to pull away. The thought of touching her made my skin crawl, but I forced myself to stand still to keep my hand on the curve of her belly. For a moment there was nothing, just the warmth of her body and the rapid rise and fall of her breathing. Then I felt it, thump. A distinct rhythmic tap against my palm, then another thump, thump. It felt like a kick. To any hopeful father, to any man desperate for a legacy, it would have felt like a miracle. But I was an architect. I spent my life understanding structures, materials, and physics. I knew how things moved, and what I felt under my hand was not the fluid rolling movement of a fetus in amniotic fluid. It was precise. It was mechanical. It was a rhythmic pulse, too sharp, too consistent. It was a haptic feedback device. I realized with a jolt of horror that she was wearing a suit or a belt under her clothes, something high-tech designed to simulate fetal movement. The level of premeditation required for this was staggering. She hadn't just lied, she had engineered a false reality. Oh, Harrison breathed, watching my face closely. Did you feel that that is your son? He is telling you he is okay. I looked into her eyes. They were wide, pleading, shining with unshed tears. Behind that mask of vulnerability, I saw a cold, calculating assessment. She was waiting to see if the bait had been taken. I had to make her believe it had. I forced a smile onto my face, a weak, wavering smile of a confused old man. I felt it, I whispered. I felt him kick. See? She cried, throwing her arms around my neck and burying her face in my chest. I told you Dr. Evans is wrong. He is a dangerous, senile old man. We are never going back to him. We will go to my clinic where they know what they are doing. I patted her back awkwardly, feeling the stiffness of her spine. I need to get us out of here. I need to get to safety. I am sorry, Melanie, I said, pulling away gently. I don't know what is happening to me lately. My mind, it feels foggy. I forget things. I get confused so easily. Maybe Evans confused me. This was the card I had to play, the dementia card. If she thought I was losing my mind, she would get sloppy. She would think her poison was working faster than expected. She would underestimate me. Her reaction was immediate. Her body relaxed. The tension drained from her shoulders. She stepped back and looked at me with a pity that made my blood boil. "Oh, honey," she cooed, reaching up to stroke my cheek. "It is okay. You have been under so much stress lately, and you are not as young as you used to be. It is normal to get confused. That is why I am here to take care of you, to remember things for you." She opened the passenger door of the Bentley and slid inside, wiping her eyes. "Come on, let's go home. I will make you some of that special herbal tea you like. It will help clear your head." I walked around to the driver's side, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. I got in and started the engine. The powerful V8 hummed to life, a sound that usually gave me pleasure, but now just sounded like an escape vehicle. As I pulled out of the parking lot, merging into the Seattle traffic, I kept my eyes on the road. The gray sky hung low over the city, matching the dread in my stomach. I glanced at the rearview mirror. Melanie was looking out the side window. She thought I couldn't see her face. She thought I was focusing on the road, lost in my confusion. The transformation was chilling. The tears were gone instantly. Her face was dry. The look of devastated fear had vanished, replaced by a flat, expressionless mask. She reached into her purse and pulled out a compact mirror, checking her makeup. She used a tissue to wipe away the black streaks of mascara with surgical precision. Then, for a split second, her eyes flicked to the rearview mirror and met mine. I quickly looked away, pretending to check the side lane, but I had seen it. The look in her eyes wasn't love. It wasn't concern. It was pure, unadulterated contempt. It was the look a butcher gives a cattle before the slaughter. She pulled out her phone and began typing a message, rapidly, probably to Travis. Her supposed brother, probably telling him the crisis was averted, that the old fool had bought the lie, that the plan was still on track. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I was driving a $200,000 car to a $20 million mansion, but I was the poorest man on earth. I was driving my executioner home. "You okay, Harrison?" she asked, her voice sugary sweet again, not looking up from her phone. "You seem tense." "I am fine, dear." I lied, my voice steady. "Just tired. I think you are right. I need that tea and a long nap." "Good," she said. Test is what you need. We have a big future to prepare for. I drove on the city passing by in a blur. I knew what I had to do. I had to survive the night. I had to dodge the poison. My Clear's throat had to contact Reynolds. And I had to turn this prey into a predator. The baby she faked was my weakness, but her arrogance would be her downfall. I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting for justice. And as I turned onto the bridge leading to Mercer Island, I made a silent vow. Harrison Caldwell might be old. He might be heartbroken, but he was not dead yet. And he was going to bring the whole house down on top of them. The iron gates of my estate on Mercer Island swung open, but for the first time in 30 years coming home didn't feel like finding sanctuary. It felt like entering the belly of the beast. The house was a masterpiece of modern architecture, a sprawling structure of glass and cedar that I had designed myself to capture the light of the Pacific Northwest. Now, every shadow seemed to stretch a little longer, every corner hiding a secret. As I walked through the front door, the first thing I saw was Travis. He was lounging on my Italian leather sofa, his feet propped up on the coffee table, a crystal tumbler in his hand. Travis was supposed to be Melanie's older brother, a down-on-his-luck real estate agent who was staying with us while he got back on his feet. In reality, he was a parasite. I watched him swirl the amber liquid in the glass, and my stomach tightened. I recognized the bottle on the sidebar. It was my 1972 Malin, a vintage I saved for monumental occasions. Travis was drinking it like it was cheap tap water. When he saw us, he didn't scramble to his feet or apologize. He just took a slow, deliberate sip, his eyes locking onto mine with a predator's assessment. "Well, look who is back," Travis drawled, his voice thick with false cheer. "So how did it go? What did the famous Dr. Evans have to say as the little heir ready to take over the world?" There was an edge to his voice that didn't sit right. A loving uncle asks if the baby is healthy. A con artist asks if the plan worked. He wasn't looking at Melanie's stomach. He was looking at my face, searching for cracks in my demeanor. I leaned heavily on my cane, playing the part of the frail, confused husband. It was overwhelming, I mumbled, letting my gaze drift unfocused around the room. There were so many buttons. The doctor said something about clips or maybe hips. I don't know. My memory is so foggy today. Travis sat up straighter, exchanging a quick, sharp look with Melanie. "Clips?" He repeated, his eyes narrowing. "What kind of clips?" Harrison? Melanie stepped in smoothly, her hand rubbing my back, in a gesture that made my skin crawl. "Oh, stop grilling him, Travis." "He is exhausted. Evans was a nightmare. He confused poor Harrison with all sorts of medical jargon. The baby is fine. Everything is fine." She guided me to my favorite armchair, the one facing the lake view. "Sit down, darling. You look pale. I'm going to make you your tea. The special herbal blend for your memory. It will help you relax." I sank into the chair, watching her disappear into the kitchen. My memory tea. For the past 6 months, she had been brewing me this concoction every night. She claimed it was an ancient remedy from her grandmother. I had drunk it dutifully, grateful for her care. Now I wondered how much arsenic I had ingested with a smile on my face. Travis stood up and walked over to the window, standing just behind my chair. I could smell the expensive scotch on his breath, mixed with his cheap cologne. "You know, Harrison," he said, his voice dropping to a low murmur, "you are lucky to have Melanie. Most women her age wouldn't have the patience for someone in your condition." My condition. I wanted to stand up and smash his teeth in. I wanted to tell him that my only condition was being too trusting. But I kept my head down, staring at my trembling hands. "She is an angel," I whispered. "I don't know what I would do without her," good Travis said. "Because she worries about you. We both do. We just want to make sure your affairs are in order. For the baby's sake." Melanie returned carrying a steaming mug on a silver tray. The steam curled up, carrying a scent that cut through the smell of the scotch. It was floral sweet, but underneath there was a metallic tang, a scent like bitter almonds. "Here you go, my love," she cooed, placing the mug in my hands. "Drink it while it is hot. It works best that way." I held the warm ceramic, feeling the heat seep into my palms. I lifted it to my lips, feigning a sip, but keeping my lips tightly sealed. I made a swallowing sound and lowered the mug. "Thank you, Melanie," I said. "You're too good to me." She smiled a beatific expression that didn't reach her eyes. "Anything for you, Harrison." Then she turned to Travis. He stepped toward her, and for a moment the mask slipped. He didn't hug her like a brother. He didn't pat her on the shoulder. He reached out and cupped her face in his hands. His thumbs stroked her cheekbones, with a familiarity that was intimate, possessive. He leaned down and kissed her forehead, his lips lingering there for seconds too long, his body pressing close to hers. "You are doing great, Mel," he whispered loud enough for me to hear if I'd been paying attention. But to them, I was just the old furniture in the room. It was disgusting. It was undeniable. That wasn't the affection of siblings. That was the hunger of lovers conspiring in the dark. I seized the moment, while their eyes were closed, lost in their twisted victory lap. I leaned over the side of my armchair. Beside me stood a magnificent bonsai tree, a juniper I had cultivated for 20 years. It was worth $5,000, a masterpiece of patience and discipline. I tipped the mug. The dark liquid poured silently into the soil of the pot. I watched as the earth drank the poison intended for me. I felt a pang of guilt for killing the tree, but it was a necessary sacrifice. I kept a small amount in the bottom of the cup, just enough to leave a residue. When I sat back up, wiping my mouth with a handkerchief, they were pulling apart. Melanie looked at me, checking to see if I'd finished. "All gone," I said, showing her the nearly empty mug. "I feel sleepy already." "Good," she said, taking the cup from my hand. "Why don't you go upstairs and rest? I will help Travis with dinner." I nodded, hauling myself up. I walked past them, past the lies, past the adultery, past the murder plot unfolding in my living room. I climbed the stairs one by one, each step a testament to my will to survive. That night, lying in the master bed, I listened to the house settle. I heard Travis leave around midnight, the roar of his sports car fading down the driveway. Melanie came to bed shortly after. She slipped under the silk sheets, her body warm against mine. I lay perfectly still, controlling my breathing, matching the rhythm of deep sleep. She turned on her side, facing me. In the darkness, I could feel her gaze on my face. She reached out and brushed a stray hair from my forehead. It was a tender gesture, one that would have made my heart swell just yesterday. Now it felt like the touch of a spider testing its web. "Sleep tight, old man," she whispered into the dark. "It won't be long now." Her breathing evened out, deepening into slumber. But I remained wide awake, staring at the shadows dancing on the ceiling. I listened to the steady rhythm of her heart, a heart I now knew was black and rotten. I was lying next to my executioner. I was sharing a pillow with a monster who had looked me in the eye and fed me poison with a smile. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. The dizziness, the nausea, the metallic taste in my mouth over the last few months. It wasn't age, it wasn't dementia. I was being murdered in my own home in the slow, cruelest way possible. I turned my head slightly to look at the baby monitor sitting on the nightstand, a device she had insisted we buy early. It stared back at me like a single, unblinking eye. There was no baby to monitor. There was only greed. My fear began to harden into something else. It crystallized into a cold, sharp rage. They thought I was a senile old fool. They thought I was a helpless victim. They had forgotten who I was. I was Harrison Caldwell, I had built skyscrapers that withstood earthquakes. I had negotiated deals with sharks in boardrooms who would eat Travis for breakfast. I looked at Melanie's sleeping face, beautiful and deadly. "You made a mistake, my dear. I thought you didn't finish the job." I closed my eyes, but not to sleep. I began to plan. I needed evidence. I needed to know exactly who she was, where she came from, and how deep this rot went. I needed Reynolds, and I needed him tonight. The tree downstairs was already dying. I would not be next. The digital clock on the nightstand read 2:14 in the morning. The red numbers seemed to float in the darkness like ominous eyes watching me. Beside me, Melanie shifted in her sleep, her breathing deep and rhythmic. I held my breath, my body tense under the duvet, waiting to see if she would wake up. She mumbled something incoherent and rolled over, facing away from me. I waited another 5 minutes, counting every second, my heart pounding, a slow, heavy drum beat against my ribs. Satisfied that she was in a deep slumber, I slid out from under the covers. The hardwood floor was cold against my bare feet, a grounding sensation that helped clear the fog of fear in my mind. I did not grab my robe. I did not put on my slippers. I needed to move silently like a ghost, haunting the halls of the life I used to own. I crept out of the master bedroom, leaving the door slightly ajar just in case I needed to dive back in quickly. I navigated the hallway by memory, avoiding the third floorboard from the left, which I knew creaked. I made my way down the grand staircase, my hand hovering over the banister, but not touching it, leaving no trace. I headed straight for the basement. It was a finished space, a climate-controlled wine cellar and storage area. But in the back corner behind a stack of old architectural blueprints was my old workbench. It was dusty, neglected since I retired, a relic of the man I used to be when I liked to fix things with my own hands. I knelt down and pulled out the bottom drawer of a red metal toolbox. Buried under a tangle of wires and rusted screwdrivers was a Nokia burner phone. I had bought it 3 years ago for a project site inspection in a rough neighborhood and never thrown it away. I prayed the battery still held a charge. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life, bathing my face in a dim, pixelated light. 1 bar of battery. It was enough. My fingers stiff with age and adrenaline punched in a number I had memorized long ago. It was the number of Elias Reynolds, a private investigator I had used for corporate background checks back when I ran my firm. Reynolds was ex-military, paranoid, and expensive. But he was the best. He picked up on the second ring. His voice was gravel, awake and alert, as if he had been expecting my call. Called, "Well," he said. "It is 2 in the morning. This better be a life or death situation." "It is Elias," I whispered, my voice echoing slightly in the concrete room. "I need you to run a deep background check immediately." I heard the sound of a match striking and the exhale of smoke on the other end. "Name Melanie Miller," I said, or whatever her name really is. "I need medical records prior to 2015. Specifically, I need to know about any reproductive surgeries, and I need to know her relationship with a man named Travis. He claims to be her brother." There was a pause, followed by the rapid clacking of a keyboard. "You sound rattled, Harrison. You are usually the calmest man in the room." "I am not calm," I hissed. I think I am being poisoned." The keyboard clacking stopped abruptly. "Explain." I sat down heavily on the cold concrete floor, leaning my back against the workbench. The words tumbled out of me, a confession of weakness I had been denying for months. For the last 6 months, Elias, I have been deteriorating. It started with the tremors in my hands. I couldn't hold a drafting pencil steady. Then the brain fog set in. I would walk into a room and forget why I was there. I forgot the alarm code to my own house twice last week. I've been dizzy, nauseous. My skin feels sensitive to the touch. I paused, swallowing the lump in my throat. I went to 3 different specialists. They all looked at my chart, saw my age, and said the same thing. Early onset dementia Parkinson's, just getting old. Melanie was there every time, nodding, holding my hand, telling them how I mix up names, how I get confused at night. And you believe them, Reynolds said, his voice void of judgment, just stating facts. I did. I admitted shame burning my cheeks in the darkness. I thought my mind was failing me. I thought she was my caretaker. She makes me this tea every night. She says it is for memory. It tastes like almonds, Elias. Bitter almonds, arsenic, Reynolds said flatly. Or cyanide in small doses. Classic. I closed my eyes, picturing the bonsai tree upstairs drinking that tea. And today, we went for an ultrasound. There is no baby, Elias. The doctor saw surgical clips. She is sterile. It is a long con. Give me 5 minutes, Reynolds said. Stay on the line. The line went silent, saved for the rhythmic tapping of his keys. I sat there in the dark basement of my multi-million-dollar mansion, feeling like a rat in a maze. I looked around at the shadows. Above me, sleeping in my bed, was a woman who had meticulously dismantled my health, my confidence, and my sanity, all while smiling and calling me darling. She had made me doubt my own mind so she could steal my life. Harrison Reynolds' voice cut through the silence, sharp and urgent. Are you sitting down? I am on the floor, Elias. Give it to me. I did a preliminary sweep on her when you married her, Harrison, but you told me to stop. You said you were in love and didn't want to pry. I should have ignored you. Just tell me. Her name isn't Melanie Miller, it is Brenda Stevens. She was a registered nurse in Ohio until 2014, a nurse. The realization hit me like a physical blow. That explained everything. She knew the dosages. She knew the symptoms. She knew exactly how to make a poisoning look like natural geriatric decline. She wasn't just guessing. She was a professional. Why isn't she a nurse anymore? I asked, dreading the answer. She was stripped of her license for diverting narcotics, fentanyl, and oxycodone. She was stealing from hospice patients, Harrison dying people. She was caught, pleaded down to a misdemeanor to avoid jail time, and vanished. Changed her name, moved west, and the surgery, I asked my breath-hitching tubal ligation in 2012. Reynolds confirmed voluntary sterilization after she gave a child up for adoption. She has 0 chance of getting pregnant naturally. The ultrasound doctor was right. I let out a shaky breath. It was confirmed. The final nail in the coffin of my marriage. And Travis Stevens, Reynolds continued. Not her brother, her ex-husband, or technically her current husband. I can't find a divorce record. He did 3 years for insurance fraud. They are a team, Harrison. Grifters. They find a mark, they bleed him dry, and they move on. But you are their whale. I looked at the phone in my hand, the screen glowing dimly. 24.5 million. That was the number. That was the price on my head. They didn't just want my money, they wanted it all. And the only way to get it all was for me to die before I figured it out. The brain fog, the confusion, the fatigue, it was all induced. They were weakening me, breaking me down so I would sign over power of attorney. They wanted control of the estate before they delivered the final fatal dose. Harrison listened to me. Reynolds said, his voice intense. You need to get out of that house tonight. If they suspect, they will escalate. They will stage a fall down the stairs or an overdose. You are not safe. I can't leave. I whispered, a cold resolve settling over me. If I leave now, they will run. They will disappear with the jewelry, the cash, the liquid assets they have already siphoned off, and they will do this to someone else. Then what are you going to do? Reynolds asked. I am going to finish this. I said, I am going to let them think they are winning. I am going to let them think the poison is working. And when they make their move, I will be ready. I need you to get a team over here, Elias. Tomorrow I need cameras, I need microphones, I need to catch them in the act. Can you do that? I can have a crew there by noon disguised as HVAC repair, Reynolds said. But Harrison, you are playing a dangerous game. You are swimming with sharks. I am not swimming. Elias, I said, standing up, my knees cracking but holding my weight. I am the one building the tank. I hung up the phone and powered it down, shoving it back into the toolbox under the rusty screwdrivers. I stood in the silence of the basement for a moment, letting the truth wash over me. Brenda. Her name was Brenda. I walked back up the stairs, moving with a new purpose. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. But it was overshadowed by a burning, righteous anger. I had built skyscrapers. I had weathered recessions. I had buried a wife I truly loved. I would not be taken down by a disgraced nurse and a two-bit con man. I slipped back into the master bedroom. Melanie, or Brenda, was still asleep, looking like an angel in the moonlight. I climbed back into bed, careful not to disturb the mattress. I laid my head on the pillow, turning to face her. I watched the rise and fall of her chest. You picked the wrong old man, Brenda, I thought, staring at her closed eyelids. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. I lay there listening to the house, waiting for the sun to rise on the day that would begin my war. I wasn't just a victim of a romance scam. I was a man fighting for his life, his legacy, and his dignity. And tomorrow the counterattack would begin. The morning sun filtered through the floor, toe-ceiling windows of the living room, casting long, pale beams across the hardwood floor. It should have been a beautiful start to the day. The kind of morning I used to cherish with a cup of coffee and the newspaper. But as I walked into the room, leaning heavily on my cane, my eyes were drawn instantly to the side table by my armchair. The silence in the room felt heavy, suffocating like the air before a storm. There, sitting in its hand-painted ceramic pot, was my juniper bonsai. Yesterday, it had been a vibrant, lush sculpture of green needles and twisting bark, a testament to 20 years of careful pruning and patience. Today, it looked like something from a nightmare. The needles had turned a sickly ash-gray color, and many had fallen, littering the table like dried bones. The branches drooped, lifeless and brittle. The soil, usually a rich, dark earth, looked scorched, as if an invisible fire had burned it from the roots up. I stared at the dead tree, a cold chill spreading through my chest. That tree was supposed to be me. The poison that had withered those sturdy roots overnight was meant for my veins. If I had drunk that tea, if I hadn't poured it into the pot, while Travis and Melanie were distracted by their illicit affection, I might not have woken up this morning, or worse, I might have woken up with my kidneys failing, my mind slipping further into the fog they were manufacturing for me. The bonsai was not just a plant anymore. It was irrefutable physical evidence of attempted murder. Good morning, Harrison. Melanie's voice floated in from the hallway, light and cheerful. I gripped my cane tighter, forcing my knuckles to turn white, grounding myself in the physical sensation so I wouldn't scream. She walked into the living room, wearing a silk robe that I had bought her in Paris, looking for all the world like a loving wife starting her day. She held a tray with breakfast, playing the role of the devoted caregiver to the hilt. Then she saw the tree. She stopped mid-step. The tray rattled slightly in her hands. For a split second, the mask slipped. Her eyes went wide, pupils dilating in genuine shock. She stared at the withered, blackened plant, and I saw the calculations spinning behind her eyes. She knew exactly what had happened. She knew where the tea had gone. "Oh my goodness," she gasped, setting the tray down quickly on the coffee table. "Look at your tree, Harrison." What happened to it? I moved slowly toward the armchair, dragging my left leg, slightly adding to the performance of a man in decline. I don't know. I rasped, my voice sounding weak and confused. It was fine yesterday. It looks burned. Melanie walked over to the plant. She didn't touch it. She stood a safe distance away, as if the toxicity might jump out and bite her. She turned to me, her face arranging itself into an expression of frustrated concern. "It must be the gardeners," she said, shaking her head. I told that new crew to be careful with the fertilizer. They must have mixed the chemicals wrong or used the wrong spray. I'm going to call the landscaping company right now and give them a piece of my mind. They killed your favorite tree. It was a smooth lie delivered with the confidence of a sociopath. She didn't stutter. She didn't blush. She just shifted the blame to an innocent third party without blinking. I loved that tree, I mumbled, sinking into the armchair. I know, honey, she said, coming over to stroke my hair. We will buy you another one, a bigger one. Now eat your oatmeal. You need your strength. I looked at the bowl of oatmeal. It looked innocent enough, but after the tree, I couldn't trust anything she touched. I had to be smart. I had to pretend to eat, but I couldn't ingest anything she prepared. I picked up the spoon, letting my hand tremble violently. I lifted a spoonful of oats halfway to my mouth, then let my wrist go limp. The spoon clattered loudly into the bowl, splattering oatmeal onto the tray in my lap. Oh, Harrison. Melanie sighed, grabbing a napkin. I am sorry, I said, my voice rising in panic. I am sorry, Elizabeth. I made a mess. The room went deadly silent. Elizabeth was my first wife. She had died 10 years ago. I had never called Melanie by her name before. It was the ultimate insult, the ultimate sign that my mind was unraveling. Melanie froze the napkin hovering over my lap. Her jaw tightened. I saw a flash of pure hatred in her eyes, a spark of jealousy and annoyance that she quickly suppressed. I am not Elizabeth Harrison, she said, her voice tight and strained. I am Melanie, your wife. Elizabeth is dead. Remember. I looked at her with wide, vacant eyes. Melanie, I repeated slowly as if testing the word. Right. Melanie, I am so sorry. My head, it feels like it is floating. I get the names mixed up. The faces, they blur together. She finished wiping my lap, her movements rougher than necessary. It is okay, she said, though her tone suggested it was anything but okay. It is just the stress. This was the moment. I could see it in her posture. She was impatient. She was tired of the charade. The dead tree had spooked her, and my apparent senility was annoying her. She wanted this to be over. She wanted the money, and she wanted me gone. I needed to give her exactly what she wanted. I needed to open the door to the trap so wide she would run right through it without checking for tripwires. I pushed the tray away, looking defeated. I can't eat Melanie, I whispered. Melanie, I feel weak. Weaker than yesterday. She looked at me, assessing my condition. She was probably calculating dosages in her head, wondering how much longer it would take. You need rest? She said. No, I said, sitting up a little straighter, grabbing her hand with a desperate, clammy grip. I don't need rest. I need peace of mind. What do you mean? She asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. I looked at the dead bonsai tree, then back at her. I am fading. Melanie? I said, letting a tear leak out of the corner of my eye. I can feel it. The doctor was wrong about the baby, but maybe he was right about me. I am not well, and I am terrified that something will happen to me before I secure our future. Before I secure the baby's future. Her breath hitched. She leaned closer, the scent of her perfume cloying and suffocating. What are you saying, Harrison? I want to sign the papers, I said. The air in the room seemed to electrify. What papers? She asked, playing coy. But I could feel her pulse racing through her hand. The power of attorney, I said, and the will. I want to transfer control of the accounts to you now. While I still have moments of clarity, I don't want the state to step in if I lose my mind completely. I want you to have everything, you and the baby. I watched the reaction ripple through her body. It was visceral. Her pupils dilated. A flush rose in her cheeks. It was like watching an addict be offered their drug of choice. The greed was so naked, so raw, it was almost obscene. She didn't see a dying husband. She saw $24.5 million unlocking itself. "Oh, Harrison," she breathed, squeezing my hand back. "You are so brave. You're doing the right thing. It will be such a relief for you to not have to worry about the business or the bills. I can take care of everything." I nodded weakly. "Yes, you take care of everything. Call your lawyer. That man Vince, call him. Tell him to come tomorrow. I want to do it at the party." "The party?" she asked, confused. "The gender reveal." I said, "Let's make it a celebration. We will announce the baby, and I will sign the papers in front of everyone. A gift. The ultimate gift for my new family." A slow, predatory smile spread across her face. It was the smile of a woman who had won the lottery. She thought she had broken me. She thought her poison and her gaslighting had finally worked. She thought I was handing her the keys to the kingdom on a silver platter. "That is a wonderful idea, Harrison," she said, standing up. "It will be a beautiful ceremony. I will call Vince right now, and Travis, we need to prepare." She bent down and kissed my forehead. It was the kiss of Judas. "I will go make the calls," she said, turning and walking briskly out of the room. She didn't look back at the dead tree. She didn't look back at me. She was already mentally spending the money. I sat alone in the silence, listening to her excited footsteps fading down the hall. I looked at the bonsai one last time. "I am sorry, old friend," I whispered to the withered branches, "but your death just bought me the time I need to bury them." I picked up the spoon again, wiped it clean, and set it on the tray. Then I leaned back and closed my eyes. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now all I had to do was wait for the party. Tomorrow the house would be full of witnesses. Tomorrow there would be cameras. Tomorrow Melanie and Travis would walk into a celebration and leave in handcuffs, and I would be the one smiling. Vince arrived at the estate 2 hours later, pulling up in a rusted sedan that leaked oil onto my pristine driveway. He was exactly the kind of lawyer I expected a woman like Melanie to know. He wore a navy blue suit that was shiny with age at the elbows and knees, and a tie that stopped 3 in above his belt buckle. He smelled of stale cigarette smoke and desperation. When he walked into my foyer, his eyes darted around, assessing the value of the art on the walls, the crystal chandelier, the marble floors. It wasn't the look of an appreciator of fine things. It was the look of a thief casing a jewelry store. "Mr. Caldwell," Vince said, extending a hand that felt damp and limp. "It is an honor. Melanie has told me so much about you. I bet she has." I thought, taking his hand with my weak, trembling grip. "I bet she told you exactly how much I am worth, down to the last cent." "Thank you for coming on such short notice, Vince," I said, my voice quavering. I want to get this done before I forget. Before the fog comes back." Melanie was hovering by his side, playing the part of the supportive, reluctant wife. "Oh, Harrison, are you sure about this? We don't have to do it today. You look so tired." Her words said one thing, but her eyes were screaming at Vince to open the briefcase. She led us to the dining room table, the long mahogany surface where I had hosted senators and business tycoons. Now it was the setting for my own signing of execution. Travis was already there, leaning against the sideboard, cleaning his fingernails with a pocket knife. He didn't look up when we entered, but his presence filled the room like a noxious gas. He was the muscle, the enforcer, ensuring the sheep didn't stray from the path to the slaughterhouse. Vince sat down and opened his battered leather briefcase. He pulled out a stack of documents thick enough to be a novel. He pushed them across the polished wood toward me. "These are standard documents, Mr. Caldwell." Vince said, his voice oily and practiced. "A durable power of attorney and a revised last will and testament. They simply ensure that Melanie has the legal authority to manage your assets and make medical decisions for you should you become incapacitated. Incapacitated. That was the polite legal term for dead or comioma ossae from arsenic poisoning. I looked down at the papers. The legal jargon swam before my eyes, but my architect's brain trained to spot structural flaws in blueprints picked out the key phrases immediately. I, Harrison Caldwell, hereby revoke all prior wills. I grant Melanie Caldwell full, immediate, and irrevocable power of attorney sole beneficiary, 100% of the estate, real property, and liquid assets to be transferred to Melanie Caldwell and the unborn child upon my death. It was a total usurpation. If I signed these papers, they wouldn't even have to wait for me to die to empty my bank accounts. They could drain the $24.5 million tomorrow, put me in a state-run nursing home, and leave me to rot. It was a death warrant signed in black ink. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my reading glasses, my hands shaking so badly, it took me 2 tries to put them on. I wanted them to see the tremor. I wanted them to see the frailty. It seems very comprehensive, I murmured, turning a page. It is for your protection, Harrison Melanie said softly, placing a hand on my shoulder. I just want to make sure the baby is safe and that you don't have to worry about bills or business anymore. You can just rest. I looked up at her. Her eyes were wide and innocent, but the corners of her mouth were tight with tension. She was holding her breath. I picked up the heavy fountain pen Vince had placed on the document. It was a Mont Blanc, my own pen, which she must have given him to use. The irony was bitter. I positioned the nib over the signature line on the power of attorney document. The room went silent. I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. I could hear Vince's shallow breathing. I could feel the heat radiating from Melanie's hand on my shoulder. I touched the pen to the paper. A tiny dot of ink bloomed on the white page. Then I let my hand spasm. The pen skidded across the paper, leaving a jagged, ugly black streak that tore through the text. I dropped the pen. It clattered loudly onto the mahogany table and rolled away. Damn it! I cried out, my voice thick with frustration and fear. My hand, I can't control it. Melanie's grip on my shoulder tightened painfully. It is okay, Harrison. Just try again. Take a deep breath. Travis pushed off the sideboard and walked over. He stood directly behind my chair, looming over me. I could feel his body heat the threat inherent in his proximity. He placed a large, heavy hand on my other shoulder. He squeezed. It wasn't a comforting squeeze, it was a warning. He dug his thumb into the soft tissue near my neck, hitting a pressure point that sent a jolt of pain down my arm. Steady now, old-timer Travis whispered, his voice low and menacing near my ear. You can do this. Just focus. Sign the paper, do it for Melanie, do it for the kid. The pain in my shoulder was sharp, real pain that cut through my act. He was hurting me. He was telling me that if I didn't sign, things would get physical. They were done waiting. The mask of civility was slipping. I looked at the pen lying on the table. I looked at Vince, who was watching with a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. I looked at Melanie, whose face had hardened into a demanding glare. I realized with a jolt of terror that I had pushed it too far. If I refused now, if I said I couldn't do it, Travis might force the pen into my hand. Or worse, they might decide that a signature wasn't necessary if I had a tragic fall down the stairs tonight. I needed an out. I needed a delay that appealed to their greed and their vanity. I picked up the pen again, gripping it like a lifeline. I brought it to the paper. My hand hovered, trembling violently. I can't. I sobbed, dropping the pen again. I am useless. I am a useless, broken old man. Travis growled low in his throat. He leaned in closer, his breath hot on my neck. Pick up the pen, Harrison. No. I shouted, a sudden burst of senile obstinance. Not like this. Not in secret. Not with this mess. I swept my arm across the table, knocking the papers to the floor. Vince jumped back, startled. Melanie looked furious, ready to strike. "Harrison, what are you doing?" she hissed. I turned to her, my eyes wet with fake tears, my expression one of pathetic desperation. "I want to do it right, Melanie. This is my legacy. This is everything I built. I don't want to sign it away in a dark room with a stranger." I grabbed her hands. "The party," I said, my eyes lighting up with a manic energy. "The gender reveal party on Saturday. That is when I will do it." Melanie blinked, confused. "The party?" Yes, I insisted, talking fast, breathless. "All our friends will be there. The society columnists, my business partners. I want to make a speech. I want to announce the baby, reveal the gender, and then I will sign everything over to you in front of everyone as the ultimate gift." I squeezed her hands. "Think about it, Melanie. Everyone will see how much I trust you. Everyone will see that you are the new head of the Caldwell Empire. It will be the social event of the season, a passing of the torch." I saw the gears turning in her head. She was a narcissist. She didn't just want the money, she wanted the status. She wanted the applause. She wanted the world to see her as the devoted wife and the powerful A's. Signing in a quiet room was efficient, but signing in front of Seattle's elite, that was a coronation. She looked at Travis. He had stopped squeezing my shoulder. He was looking at Melanie, a smirk playing on his lips. He liked the idea too. It appealed to his ego. He wanted to see me humiliated publicly, handing over my life's work while everyone cheered. "It is only 2 days away, Iwasa," I pleaded. "I will rest. I will drink your tea. I will get my strength back so I can hold the pen steady. Please, Melanie, let me have this one last moment of pride. Let me give you this gift the right way." Melanie looked back at me. The anger in her eyes faded, replaced by a greedy glimmer. She imagined the photos. She imagined the envy of her friends. "Saturday," she said slowly. "You promise you will sign on Saturday. No excuses." "I promise," I said, clutching my chest. "On the lives of my parents. I promise it will be the greatest gift I have ever given." She smiled, then a triumphant, wicked smile. "Okay, Harrison, we will do it your way. Saturday at the party." She looked at Vince. "Pick up the papers, Vince. Bring fresh copies on Saturday and make sure the press is there. Harrison wants a show." Vince scrambled to pick up the documents from the floor, stuffing them back into his briefcase. He looked relieved to be leaving without witnessing a murder. Travis released my shoulder, patting it with a heavy, mocking force. "Good choice, Harrison. It is going to be a hell of a party." They walked Vince to the door, leaving me alone at the dining table. My shoulder throbbed where Travis had gripped me. My heart was racing so fast I felt dizzy. But I had done it. I had bought myself 48 hours. I looked at the spot on the table where the pen had lain. "You think you have won?" I thought, listening to their laughter in the hall. "You think I am giving you a coronation?" I stood up, my legs shaking. But this time not from acting. I was shaking from the adrenaline of the gamble. Saturday wasn't going to be a coronation. It was going to be an execution. And they had just agreed to walk onto the scaffold and put the noose around their own necks. I had 2 days to set the trap. 2 days to turn this house into a surveillance state. 2 days to stay alive. I turned and walked toward the stairs. I needed to rest. I needed to prepare because come Saturday, the clueless old man was going to burn their world to the ground. Friday morning arrived with a deceptive calm, the kind of stillness that precedes a catastrophic storm. The sky over Mercer Island was a bruised purple, threatening rain. But inside the mansion, the atmosphere was thick with the frantic energy of preparation. Melanie was in a whirlwind of activity, barking orders at the catering staff over the phone, while simultaneously critiquing her appearance in the hallway mirror. She told me she needed a full spa day to prepare for the cameras tomorrow to look the part of the glowing, expectant mother for the society pages. I kissed her cheek as she left, tasting the expensive foundation she plastered over her true nature. "Have a wonderful time, my dear," I said. "You deserve it. You have been working so hard taking care of me." She smiled that same shark-like grin. "I will be back by 5. Harrison Travis is going out to meet some old friends in the city, so you will have the house to yourself. Try to nap. We need you sharp for tomorrow." I watched her Mercedes disappear down the driveway, followed shortly by Travis in his sports car. The moment the electronic gates clicked shut, I dropped the act. The frailty vanished. The confusion evaporated. I pulled out the burner phone and hit speed dial. "They're gone, Elias. I said you have a 3-hour window. Go." 10 minutes later, a nondescript white van emblazed with the logo Emerald City HVAC Repair pulled up to the service entrance. Elias Reynolds stepped out wearing a blue jumpsuit and a tool belt, looking every bit the part of a weary repairman. Behind him were 2 younger men carrying large duffel bags that clanked with equipment. We wasted no time. I led them through the house with the precision of a general commanding a battlefield. I knew every inch of this structure. I had designed the crawl spaces, the ventilation ducts, the electrical grid. I knew exactly where to hide an eye that could not be blinded. We started in the master bedroom. Reynolds installed a micro camera inside the smoke detector directly above the bed. It was wired directly into the house's power supply so no batteries would fail at a critical moment. He put another one inside the hollow frame of the antique mirror Melanie used to admire herself. "Audio is crystal clear," Reynolds said, checking a tablet. "If she whispers in her sleep, we will hear it." We moved to the living room, the stage for tomorrow's performance. We placed cameras in the bookshelves hidden among the spines of first editions Melanie never read. We placed one in the chandelier, giving a bird's-eye view of where the signing table would be. But the most important location was the kitchen. That was the laboratory. That was where she mixed the tea. That was where she crushed the pills. I needed undeniable proof of the poisoning process. "Put it there," I said, pointing to the underside of the upper cabinets, directly above the granite island where she prepared my meals. Reynolds drilled a hole no larger than a pinhead into the wood. He slid a fiber optic lens inside, masking it perfectly within the grain of the cabinetry. It pointed straight down. It would capture every movement of her hands, every powder, every vial. We finished in 2 hours and 45 minutes. The house looked exactly as it had before. Not a speck of dust was out of place. Reynolds packed up his tools, wiping down every surface they had touched. "I set up the server in the basement behind the wine racks," Reynolds said, handing me a secure iPad. "It is on a closed loop. It does not touch the house Wi-Fi. They cannot hack it. You can view all feeds from this tablet." He looked at me, his expression grim. "Harrison, once you see what happens in this house when you are not in the room, there is no going back. You are going to see the face of the devil." "I have already seen it, Elias," I replied. "Now I just need the world to see it too." Reynolds and his team left the van rattling down the driveway just as the sky opened up and rain began to fall. I went into my study and locked the door. I sat in my leather chair, the iPad heavy in my hands. I felt like a security guard in my own life, watching the screens flicker to life. The feeds were high-definition, crisp, and terrifyingly intimate. I saw my empty bed. I saw the silent living room. I saw the gleaming kitchen island. Suddenly, the front door chime rang on the living room audio feed. I switched views. Travis walked in. He was early. He was alone. I watched him on the screen as he threw his keys onto the console table. He didn't look like the concerned brother anymore. He looked like the owner of the place. He walked straight to the bar cart, bypassing the cheap stuff and grabbing the neck of a crystal decanter. He poured himself a drink, not bothering with a glass, swigging it straight from the bottle. He wiped his mouth with the back of his hand and pulled out his cell phone. He dialed a number, pacing the living room floor like a caged tiger. I turned up the volume on the iPad. His voice came through the speakers, distorted slightly by the distance, but unmistakable. "Hey, baby," Travis said. His tone was different. It wasn't the conspiratorial whisper he used with Melanie. It was husky, seductive. I watched him flop onto the sofa, kicking his shoes off onto my Persian rug. "Yeah, I know." He laughed into the phone. "I miss you too. It has been hell being stuck in this museum with these two freaks. Two freaks. He meant me and he meant Melanie." I leaned closer to the screen, my breath catching in my throat. Who was he talking to? "Yeah, the plan is solid." Travis continued, taking another swig from the decanter. "Tomorrow is the big day. The old man is going to sign over the whole kingdom. He thinks it is a gender reveal party. Can you believe that he thinks he is getting a son?" He laughed, a cruel barking sound that echoed in the empty room. "Yeah, Melanie has him wrapped around her little finger. She thinks she is the mastermind. She thinks she is going to be the grieving widow living in luxury." He paused, listening to the person on the other end. Then a slow, malicious grin spread across his face. "Don't worry, babe," he said, his voice dropping lower. "I haven't forgotten the real plan. As soon as the old man kicks the bucket and the money hits Melanie's account, I am making my move." I froze. "What move?" "She trusts me," Travis said, examining his fingernails. "She put my name on the offshore accounts so I could help her launder the cash. She thinks I am her loyal brother, her partner in crime. The stupid cow doesn't realize I have the passwords." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it. The fracture in their armor. "Listen to me," Travis said, sitting up straighter. "The second the funds clear, I am draining everything, every cent. I will leave her with the dead body and the empty bank accounts. Let her explain that to the cops. I will be on a plane to Rio with you. Before she even realizes she is broke." He laughed again, shaking his head. "She actually thinks I love her. Can you imagine? She is psychotic. I am just playing the part, babe. Just a few more days. Just hold on. Once the old man is gone, we are set for life. 24 million and Melanie gets nothing but a prison cell." He hung up the phone and tossed it onto the cushion beside him. He lay back, closing his eyes, a look of supreme satisfaction on his face. I sat back in my chair in the study, the iPad trembling in my hands. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, a dry, incredulous sound. It wasn't a laugh of humor. It was the laugh of a man who has just been handed a loaded gun by his enemy. There is no honor among thieves. Travis wasn't just conning me, he was conning the con artist. He was playing Melanie for a fool just as she was playing me. She thought they were partners. Bonnie and Clyde, united against the world. She didn't know she was just another mark to him. This was better than evidence of poisoning. This was leverage. This was a nuclear bomb I could detonate right in the middle of their celebration. I looked at Travis on the screen, resting peacefully, dreaming of his life in Rio with his real girlfriend. He thought he was the smartest man in the room. He thought he had played everyone perfectly. "You are greedy, Travis," I whispered to the screen. "And that is why you are going to lose." I saved the video clip, backing it up to 3 different cloud servers. I checked the audio quality. It was perfect. Every word, every betrayal captured in high fidelity. I leaned back, steepled my fingers, and looked at the ceiling. The game had changed. I wasn't just going to expose them to the police. I was going to destroy them from the inside out. I was going to let them tear each other apart before the handcuffs even clicked shut. I checked the time. Melanie would be home soon, glowing from her spa day, thinking she was the queen of the chessboard. She had no idea her knight was planning to checkmate her. I unlocked the study door and walked out into the hallway. I felt lighter, sharper. The fear of death was gone, replaced by the thrill of the hunt. I walked past the living room where Travis was napping. I looked at him with a cold, detached curiosity. Sleep well, Travis, I thought. Enjoy your dreams of Rio because tomorrow you are going to wake up in a nightmare. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water, standing right under the hidden camera I had just installed. I raised the glass in a silent toast to the lens to Reynolds and to the beautiful poetic justice of a double cross. I had the weapon. Now I just needed to wait for the perfect moment to pull the trigger. The sun rose on Friday with a cold gray light filtering through the high windows of the mansion. I was already awake, sitting in my favorite armchair in the living room, a cup of untouched coffee beside me. In my hands, I held the iPad Reynolds had given me, its screen glowing with the feed from the kitchen camera. It was the morning of the day before the party, the day before the execution of their plan and my counterstrike. Melanie was in the kitchen. She wore a floral apron over her silk pajamas, humming a soft tune as she moved between the stove and the granite island. To anyone else, she looked like the picture of domestic bliss, a loving wife preparing a meal for her husband. But through the high-definition lens hidden in the cabinetry above, I saw the truth. I watched my breath held tight in my chest as she reached into the bodice of her pajama top. Her hand emerged holding a small translucent packet filled with a fine white powder. She glanced toward the kitchen doorway, checking to make sure she was alone. Satisfied, she turned back to the stove where a pot of chicken noodle soup was simmering. The camera zoomed in, capturing every detail with terrifying clarity. Her fingers were steady practiced. She tore the corner of the packet with her teeth and tapped the powder into a specific bowl, the blue ceramic one I always used. She didn't dump it all at once. She sprinkled it carefully, stirring it in with a wooden spoon until it dissolved completely into the broth. Then she added a pinch of salt and a dash of pepper, as if seasoning a masterpiece. She smiled to herself, a small, satisfied curve of her lips that made my blood run cold. It was the smile of a chemist admiring a perfect reaction. She picked up the packet, folded the empty plastic, and tucked it back into her bra. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I had suspected it. I had known it in my gut. But seeing it watching the woman I had married poison my food with the casual efficiency of adding sugar to tea was a different kind of horror. It was intimate. It was a violation of the most basic human trust. I forced myself to breathe. I needed that soup, not to eat, but to prove. I waited a few minutes, giving her time to finish her deadly cooking show. Then I stood up, leaning on my cane, and shuffled toward the kitchen. I made sure my footsteps were heavy, announcing my presence. "Good morning, Melanie," I called out, my voice raspy with feigned sleepiness. "Something smells delicious." She turned her face, instantly arranging itself into a mask of loving concern. "Oh, Harrison, you are up early. I made you some soup. You barely ate yesterday, and I want you strong for tomorrow." She ladled the soup from the pot into the blue bowl, the one she had spiked. Steam rose from it, carrying the savory scent of chicken and herbs, masking the death hidden within. She placed it on a tray with some crackers and brought it over to the small breakfast table by the window. "Sit down, darling," she said, pulling out a chair. "Eat while it is hot." I sat down, staring at the bowl. It looked innocent. It looked nourishing. "Thank you," I said, picking up the spoon. My hand trembled, a performance that was becoming second nature. I lifted the spoon, bringing it close to my lips. I could see her watching me from the corner of her eye, pretending to wipe down the counter, but focused entirely on whether I would swallow. I let the spoon hover. Then a violent spasm shook my arm. I cried out in frustration as the spoon flew from my fingers, hitting the edge of the bowl. The bowl tipped, sending the hot soup cascading onto the table and splashing onto the floor. "Oh no," I wailed, dropping my head into my hands. "I am clumsy. I am a useless old fool." Melanie rushed over, clicking her tongue in annoyance. Harrison, be careful. That was hot. Look at this mess. I am sorry, I moaned. I am so sorry. Don't touch it, she ordered, grabbing a roll of paper towels. You might cut yourself on the ceramic if it broke. I will clean it up. Go sit in the living room. I will make you another bowl. She turned to the sink to wet a cloth. This was my window. While her back was turned, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small Ziploc bag and a wad of absorbent paper napkins I had prepared. I dropped a napkin onto the puddle of soup on the floor, letting it soak up the liquid. Quick as a snake, I snatched the sodden mass and shoved it into the plastic bag, sealing it tight. I shoved the bag back into my pocket just as she turned around. Go, Harrison, she snapped, her patience fraying. Let me clean this up. I shuffled out of the kitchen, clutching the plastic bag in my pocket like a diamond. I had the smoking gun. Now I needed the ballistics report. I went to the front door and put on my coat. Where are you going? Melanie called out from the kitchen, her voice suspicious. Just for a walk in the garden, I yelled back. I need some fresh air. I feel stifled. Don't go far, she warned. And take your phone. I walked out into the gray morning air. I didn't go to the garden. I walked down the long driveway toward the main road. I knew Dr. Evans drove past my estate every morning on his way to the hospital. We had arranged this. I stood by the stone pillar of the gate, checking my watch. 5 minutes later, a black sedan slowed down as it approached. The window rolled down. Dr. Evans was behind the wheel, looking grim. I didn't say a word. I just reached into my pocket and handed him the Ziploc bag through the window. He took it, nodding once. How long, I asked. 2 hours, he said. I will run it myself in the toxicology lab. Go back inside. Don't eat anything. Don't drink anything unless you open the bottle yourself. He rolled up the window and sped off. I watched his car disappear around the bend, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread. The clock was ticking. I returned to the house, playing the part of the weary old man. I spent the next 2 hours in my study pretending to nap, but actually watching the camera feeds. I saw Melanie cleaning the floor with bleach, scrubbing away the evidence. I saw her pour the rest of the soup down the drain, leaving no trace. She was thorough. She was professional. At 10:30, my burner phone vibrated in my pocket. I locked the study door and answered. Harrison, Dr. Evans's voice was tight, controlled anger vibrating through the line. Tell me, Robert, it is a cocktail, Harrison. A very sophisticated, very lethal cocktail. We found high concentrations of arsenic triioxide. That explains the tremors, the confusion, the skin sensitivity. I closed my eyes. Arsenic, the poison of kings and widowers. But that is not all, Evans continued. There is also Warren, a blood thinner. Warfare, I asked. Why, to ensure a massive cerebral hemorrhage, Evans explained. The arsenic weakens the blood vessel walls. The warfarin prevents clotting. They are priming you for a stroke, Harrison. A massive, catastrophic brain bleed. With your age and the symptoms you have been showing, no coroner would look twice. They would call it natural causes. How long, I asked, my voice steady despite the horror. Based on the concentration in that soup, Evan said if you had finished that bowl, maybe 48 hours, maybe less. The stress of the party tomorrow would have been the trigger. They timed it perfectly. You sign the papers, your blood pressure spikes, and boom, you are gone before the cake is cut. I felt a cold sweat break out on my forehead. 48 hours. I was living on borrowed time. I was walking on a tightrope over a pit of vipers. Thank you, Robert, I said. Keep the results. I will need them for the police. Harrison, get out of there, Evans pleaded. Call the cops now. Not yet, I said. I need them all in one room. I need the signing. I need the confession. Tomorrow, Robert. Tomorrow it ends. I hung up and sat in the silence of my study. My hands were shaking, but not from the poison this time. They were shaking with rage. They wanted me to have a stroke. They wanted my brain to bleed out while they toasted their good fortune. I looked at the calendar on my desk. Saturday, the gender reveal. It wasn't just a party. It was a deadline, a finish line. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gray waters of Lake Washington. "You want a show, Melanie?" I whispered to the reflection in the glass. "You want a stroke of luck?" I turned back to the room, my eyes landing on the safe hidden behind the painting. "I am going to give you a show," I thought. "But the only thing that is going to bleed tomorrow is your greed." I had the evidence. I had the motive. I had the weapon. Now all I had to do was survive the night. I unlocked the door and walked out to face my wife, a smile on my face that hid the executioner beneath. Friday night bled into the early hours of Saturday morning, wrapping the estate in a suffocating shroud of silence. I sat in the locked sanctuary of my study, the leather of my chair cold against my back. The only light in the room came from the iPad screen propped up on my desk, casting a ghostly greenish glow on my face. I was watching the feed from the master bedroom, the infrared camera inside the smoke detector, turning the room into a high-contrast shadow play. Melanie entered the frame. Even in the grainy black and white footage, she looked exhausted. The performance of the glowing mother-to-be was taking a physical toll. She closed the door and locked it, a precaution she had started taking recently, claiming she needed privacy for her pregnancy rituals. I knew better. She needed privacy to shed her skin. She walked to the large vanity mirror, the very one that concealed a microphone recording her every breath. She stared at her reflection for a long moment, her face stripping away the mask of the doting wife. Her shoulders slumped. The radiant smile she wore for Travis and the servants vanished, replaced by a sneer of pure exhaustion. Then she began the unmasking. She reached up and unbuttoned her silk blouse, letting it fall to the floor. Underneath, she wore a heavy, flesh-cold support garment that extended from her hips to her ribs. It looked uncomfortable, restrictive, like a medieval torture device designed to reshape the body. With a grimace of pain, she reached behind her back, her fingers fumbling with a hidden system of industrial strength, clasps, and buckles. It was like watching a soldier dismantle armor. With a final audible snap that the microphone picked up clearly, the tension released. She peeled the garment away from her skin. Attached to the front of the corset was the belly. I watched, mesmerized by the horror of it, as she detached the prosthetic. It wasn't a cheap pillow or a bundle of rags. It was a masterpiece of special effects, a high-grade silicone sculpture molded to perfection. In the infrared light, it looked like a severed limb, heavy and lifeless. She held it in her hands for a moment, the weight of my non-existent child, before dropping it carelessly onto the velvet bench at the foot of the bed. It landed with a dull, heavy thud. The camera zoomed in as she turned back to the mirror. The skin of her abdomen, where the prosthetic had been strapped for 16 hours straight, was raw and angry. Deep red welts crisscrossed her torso where the straps had dug in. The silicone had trapped heat and moisture against her skin, creating a rash that looked painful and inflamed. She was suffering for her art. She was literally bleeding for my money. She hissed through her teeth as she touched the raw skin. She opened a drawer and pulled out a bottle of medicated baby powder. She shook it vigorously, puffing a cloud of white dust into the air that swirled like smoke in the camera's infrared vision. She applied the powder to her chafed skin, her face twisted in a grimace of stinging pain. Then she spoke. It wasn't a whisper. It was a growl, a monologue directed at her own reflection, intended for no one but the devil on her shoulder. "Endure it, Brenda," she muttered, using her real name, the name of the disgraced nurse she used to be. "Just endure it. $24. $5 million is waiting at the finish line. You can wear this damn thing for one more day." She rubbed the powder into a particularly nasty welt on her side. "Damn, old man." She spat, her voice dripping with venom. "Why is he so tough he should be bedridden by now? I gave him enough arsenic to kill a horse. Why won't he just die?" She looked at the empty bed where I should have been sleeping, where she expected to find my cold body any morning now. "Just sign the papers." "Harrison," she said to the empty room, "sign the papers, and then do us all a favor and have that stroke. I am so sick of playing nurse. I am so sick of this itch." She laughed a short, humorless bark. Tomorrow, she promised herself. Tomorrow I get the signature. Monday I get the money. Tuesday the grieving widow act begins. And Wednesday she looked at the silicone belly on the bench. Wednesday I burn that thing. I sat in my study, my finger hovering over the screen. I had heard enough. I had seen enough. The rage that had been fueling me for days settled into a cold, hard block of ice in my chest. There was no doubt left, no sliver of hope that this was a misunderstanding. She was a predator, plain and simple, and she was getting impatient. I tapped the screen, saving the video file. I encrypted it and attached it to an email I had already drafted. The recipients were Lawyer Pendergast and Sheriff Jim Miller, my old fishing buddy who ran the county police force. I typed a short subject line, the smoking gun. I hit send. The progress bar crawled across the screen. Sending, sending, sent. The evidence was out. The trap was primed. The legal machinery was now in motion. Pendergast would have the papers ready to freeze her out completely. Jim would have his deputies on standby, parked in unmarked cars, just down the road, waiting for my signal. The raid was scheduled for tomorrow afternoon, right after the speeches, right when she felt safest. I powered down the iPad and stood up, and my legs felt steady. My mind was clear. I walked out of the study and down the hall to the guest room closet where I had moved my things. I opened the door and pulled out a garment bag from the very back. I unzipped it slowly. Inside was a black suit, hand-tailored Italian wool. It smelled faintly of cedar and old memories. I hadn't worn this suit in 5 years. The last time I had put it on was the day I buried Elizabeth, my first wife, the only woman who had ever truly loved me. I ran my hand over the fabric. It was a suit of mourning. It was a suit of endings. I hung it on the hook of the closet door. I selected a crisp white shirt, a black silk tie, and my polished Oxfords. I laid them out with the precision of a soldier preparing his dress uniform for a court-martial. Tomorrow I wouldn't just be dressing for a party. I would be dressing for a funeral. But this time I wouldn't be the one in the casket. I would be the one reading the eulogy for a marriage that never existed. I looked at the suit standing like a dark sentinel in the dim light. "Tomorrow, Melanie," I whispered to the empty room. "You want a funeral. You want a tragedy. I am going to give you one, but the only thing being buried tomorrow is your future." I turned off the light and sat on the edge of the guest bed. I didn't sleep. I just waited for the sun to rime on the day of reckoning. The script was written, the actors were in place, and the curtain was about to rise on the final act of The Widow of Mercer Island, except the widow would be the one wearing handcuffs. The great hall of my estate had been transformed into a stage for the grandest deception Seattle had ever seen. 50 of the city's social elite were milling about under the crystal chandeliers, holding flutes of vintage champagne that I had paid for. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner, the music light and airy masking the heavy stench of betrayal that hung in the room. The air was perfumed with the scent of expensive laies and the savory aroma of lobster canapes being circulated by servers in white gloves. To the casual observer, this was a celebration of life and legacy. To me, looking at the security feed on my phone one last time before stepping out, it looked like a funeral wake where the corpse was still breathing. Melanie moved through the crowd like a coronation queen. She wore a floor-length gown, of shimmering emerald silk custom tailored to hug every curve of her body, specifically the curve that did not exist. The fabric pulled tight against the silicone prosthetic strapped to her waist, showcasing the lie to the world. She walked with a hand resting protectively on the fake bump, accepting congratulations with a humble, beatific smile that made my stomach turn. "Oh, thank you," I heard her say to the wife of a bank president. "We are just so blessed. Harrison is hanging on just to meet his son." She accepted a small gift box from a guest, pressing it against her chest. She looked radiant. She looked victorious. She looked like a woman who was 90 minutes away from becoming a very rich widow. Travis was playing his part to perfection as well. He was dressed in a tuxedo that I had paid for, moving through the guests with the easy charm of the devoted brother-in-law. He poured wine, laughed at bad jokes, and guided people toward the center of the room. But I noticed his eyes. They never smiled. They darted around the room, checking the exits, checking the time, checking the position of the lawyer. He was the stage manager of this crime, ensuring every actor hit their mark. In the center of the room, positioned directly under the main chandelier, and the hidden camera I had installed yesterday, was a heavy oak table. It had been dragged in from the library. Behind it sat Vince, the oily lawyer, looking uncomfortable in his cheap suit among the cooter dresses. He had arranged the documents in a neat stack in the center of the table. The white pages gleamed under the lights, a contract with the devil waiting for a signature. Next to the papers lay my Mont Blanc pen waiting to sign away my life. It was time. I adjusted my position in the wheelchair. I had found it in the attic, a relic from when I broke my leg skiing 20 years ago. Today it was my Trojan horse. I slumped my shoulders, letting my head loll slightly to the side. I relaxed my facial muscles, letting my mouth hang open just a fraction, mimicking the slack-jawed look of the heavily medicated. I needed to look weak. I needed to look harmless. I needed them to believe that the lion was already dead. Travis appeared at the doorway of the guest wing where I was waiting. He looked down at me with a sneer that he didn't bother to hide because no one else was watching. "Showtime, Harrison," he muttered. "Try not to drool on the carpet." He grabbed the handles of the wheelchair and pushed me forward. As we rolled into the main hall, the string quartet stopped playing. The hum of conversation died down, replaced by a respectful, pitying silence. 50 pairs of eyes turned to look at me. I saw the shock on their faces. They were used to seeing Harrison Caldwell, the architect, the titan of industry, the man who stood tall and commanded attention. Now they saw a shriveled old man in a wheelchair, wrapped in a blanket, being pushed by his young wife's brother. I saw the pity. I saw the whispers behind hands. Poor Harrison. They were thinking he is fading fast. Travis pushed me through the parting crowd, heading straight for the oak table. Melanie detached herself from a group of admirers and rushed over to me. She knelt beside the wheelchair, taking my hand in hers. Her skin was warm, her grip firm. To the audience, it was a gesture of love. To me, it felt like a shackle. "Harry, darling," she said, her voice projecting clearly to the back of the room. "Everyone is here to celebrate with us. Look at all the love for our baby." I looked at her, blinking slowly, keeping my eyes unfocused. I let a small tremors shake travel through my hand. "Melanie," I rasped, my voice weak and ready. Is it time?" "Yes, my love," she said, standing up and smoothing her dress over the silicone bump. "It is time to secure our future." She gestured to Travis, who locked the brakes on the wheelchair, positioning me perfectly in front of the table. Vince stood up, shuffling his papers nervously. He uncapped the pen and held it out, the nib hovering in the air like a dagger. "Ladies and gentlemen," Melanie announced, her voice ringing out like a bell. "Before we cut the cake and reveal whether Harrison and I are having a prince or a princess, my husband has a few words he wants to say." He wanted to make this moment special. He wanted to ensure that his family is taken care of no matter what happens. A ripple of applause went through the room. It was polite, encouraging applause for the dying man doing the noble thing. They had no idea they were cheering for a robbery in progress. Melanie handed me a wireless microphone. I took it, my hand shaking so violently that the microphone rattled against the armrest of the wheelchair. I fumbled with it, almost dropping it, until Travis reached down and guided it to my lips. His hand on my wrist was hard, his fingers digging into my pulse point. It was a subtle threat, invisible to the crowd but clear to me. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw my business partners. I saw my neighbors. I saw the people who had respected me for decades now, looking at me with sad eyes. And then standing near the back, near the kitchen service entrance, I saw a familiar face. Dr. Evans was there. He wasn't dressed for a party. He was wearing his white lab coat, standing next to a tall man in a dark suit who I knew was Sheriff Miller. They were waiting. They were watching. I took a shallow, rattling breath. The air in the room felt electric. Every eye was on me. Melanie was standing to my right, her hand on my shoulder, her fingers tapping a rhythmic, impatient cadence. Travis was behind me, a dark shadow. Vince was in front of me, the pen extended. I lifted my head slowly. I let the fog in my eyes clear just for a fraction of a second, just enough to look at the camera hidden in the chandelier above. I cleared my throat. The sound boomed through the speakers, making a few guests jump. Yes, I want to thank you all for coming. I stammered, my voice trembling. This is a very important day, a day of truth. Melanie squeezed my shoulder. That is right, darling. Tell them. Tell them about the gift. I looked at the papers on the table. The bold letters of the power of attorney stared back at me. I looked at the pen. I raised my hand slowly, painfully, reaching for the pen Vince was holding out. My fingers brushed the cool metal barrel. Travis leaned down. To the crowd, it looked like a caring brother-in-law offering support to an invalid. He put his face right next to my ear, his breath hot and smelling of scotch. Do it. He whispered, his voice a low hiss that the microphone didn't pick up. Make it quick, old man. Sign the damn paper, and then you can go to sleep for as long as you want. Forever. I gripped the pen. I felt the weight of it. It was the tool they wanted me to use to dig my own grave. But as my fingers closed around it, the trembling stopped. My hands steadied. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the scent of lilies and expensive perfume and imminent justice. I looked at the pen. Then I looked up at Melanie. She was smiling, that predatory, victorious smile. She thought she had won. She thought the game was over. She was right. The game was over. But she had forgotten who was keeping the score. I didn't lower the pen to the paper. Instead, I tightened my grip on the microphone in my other hand. I sat up straighter in the wheelchair, shedding the slump of the invalid. I turned my head and looked Travis directly in the eye. He blinked, surprised by the sudden clarity in my gaze. I am not tired, Travis, I said, my voice suddenly strong, booming through the speakers, with the authority of the man who had built this house. And I am not going to sleep. I threw the expensive Mont Blanc pen onto the floor. It clattered loudly across the marble, the sound echoing like a gavel striking a block. The smile fell off Melanie's face like shattered glass. The room went dead silent. I am awake, I announced, my voice rising. And I have a different kind of reveal for you all tonight. The echo of the expensive pen hitting the marble floor was still ringing in the ears of my guests when I raised the microphone to my lips again. My hand was steady now, the tremor gone, as if it had never existed. I sat tall in the wheelchair, shedding the skin of the frail invalid I had worn for weeks. I looked out at the sea of confused faces, the socialites and business partners who had come expecting a gender reveal and a coronation. They were shifting uncomfortably, sensing the shift in atmospheric pressure, the sudden drop in temperature that precedes a violent storm. Before we cut the cake, I said, my voice booming through the speakers, with a clarity that made Travis take a step back. Before we reveal whether Melanie is giving me a son or a daughter, I want to show you all something else. I want to show you the true journey of love that brought us here today. A behind-the-scenes look at the devotion of my family. Melanie's smile faltered. She looked at me, her eyes darting between my face and the guests. She was trying to calculate if this was part of the plan, if this was just my eccentric way of building suspense before the signing. She stepped forward, her hand reaching for my shoulder again, her nails digging into my suit jacket. "Harrison, what are you doing?" she hissed under her breath, her voice tight with warning. "Just sign the papers. Stop playing games." I ignored her. I pressed a button on the remote control hidden in the armrest of the wheelchair. Above the fireplace, the motorized ceiling panel slid open with a soft. A massive 100-inch projection screen descended, slowly blocking the view of the ornate mantel. The room dimmed automatically, the smart lighting system responding to my pre-programmed command. The guests hushed their eyes, drawn to the white canvas descending from the heavens. They expected a montage of ultrasound photos, perhaps a video of us shopping for cribs set to sentimental music. Instead, the screen flickered to life with a grainy, high-contrast image. It was the view from a security camera high up in the corner of a room. My living room. The date stamp in the corner read yesterday. The time was 2:00 in the afternoon. The audio kicked in crisp and loud, amplified by the surround sound speakers I had installed for movie nights. Travis's voice filled the ballroom, booming and distorted, stripping away the veneer of the polite brother-in-law. "Hey, baby," the voice on the screen said on the huge screen. The guests watched as Travis, the man currently standing in a tuxedo behind my wheelchair, walked into my living room on the video. He flopped onto the sofa, kicking his shoes onto the table. He pulled out a phone and held it to his ear. The real Travis, the one standing in the ballroom, froze. His face went the color of ash. He looked at the screen, then at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. He reached out as if to grab the remote, but he was too far away. "Yeah, I know the video." Travis laughed. "I miss you too. It has been hell being stuck in this museum with these two freaks." A collective gasp went through the room. 50 pairs of eyes snapped from the screen to Travis, then to Melanie, then back to the screen. The insult hung in the air, raw and ugly. Melanie stood frozen, her hand still on my shoulder, but her grip had turned to ice. She stared at the image of her brother, her partner, her lover, relaxing on the sofa she had picked out. "Yeah, the plan is solid," the video continued. Travis on the screen took a swig from my crystal decanter. "Tomorrow is the big day. The old man is going to sign over the whole kingdom. He thinks it is a gender reveal party." "Can you believe that he thinks he is getting a son?" Laughter bubbled from the speakers. A cruel mocking sound that chilled the blood. "He is senile." The video, Travis said. "Melanie has him wrapped around her little finger. She thinks she is the mastermind. She thinks she is going to be the grieving widow living in luxury." In the ballroom, Melanie's hand fell from my shoulder. She took a step back, her eyes wide with shock. She looked at the real Travis, who was now shaking his head frantically, holding his hands up in a gesture of surrender that came too late. "Mel, it is not what it looks like." Travis stammered, his voice a pathetic squeak compared to the booming audio from the screen. "It is a deep fake. He edited it." But the video kept playing, rolling over his excuses like a tank. "Don't worry, babe," the video, Travis said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that echoed in every corner of the silent hall. "I haven't forgotten the real plan. As soon as the old man kicks the bucket and the money hits Melanie's account, I am making my move." The tension in the room was so thick it felt like it could snap a neck. The guests were paralyzed, witnessing a crime unfold in real time. She trusts me. The video continued. She put my name on the offshore accounts so I could help her launder the cash. She thinks I am her loyal brother. The stupid cow doesn't realize I have the passwords. Melanie let out a sound that wasn't human. It was a strangled whimper, the sound of a predator, realizing it has been hunted. She turned slowly toward Travis. Her face was a mask of disbelief that was rapidly crumbling into a rich of pure fury. "Listen to me," the video Travis said, delivering the death blow. "The second the funds clear, I am draining everything, every cent. I will leave her with the dead body and the empty bank accounts. Let her explain that to the cops. I will be on a plane to Rio with you before she even realizes she is broke. She actually thinks I love her." Can you imagine she is psychotic? Travis on screen laughed again. Travis in the ballroom dropped his champagne flute. It hit the floor and shattered the sound of breaking crystal, acting like a starting pistol. The spell broke. Melanie turned fully toward Travis. The shock had vanished. In its place was a rage so intense, so volcanic, that it distorted her beautiful features into something demonic. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at the guests. She didn't care about the $24 million anymore. She only cared about the betrayal. She screamed the word tearing out of her throat. "You traitor!" She lunged. It happened so fast that no one could intervene. Melanie hampered by her heavy gown, and the fake belly threw herself at Travis with the ferocity of a wild animal. She slammed into his chest, knocking him backward into the table where the lawyer Vince sat. Papers flew into the air like confetti. Vince scrambled back his chair, tipping over, scrambling to get away from the violence. Melanie clawed at Travis's face, her manicured nails aiming for his eyes. "You were going to steal from me," she shrieked. "After everything I did, after everything I sacrificed." Travis tried to push her off his hands, coming up to protect his face. "Mel, stop. Listen to me," he shouted. But she was beyond listening. She was a woman scorned, a criminal, double-crossed by her only accomplice. "I did it for you," she screamed, her voice echoing off the high ceilings, ensuring every single person in the room heard her confession. "I poisoned him for you. I gave him the arsenic for you. I was going to kill him so we could be together." The room erupted. People screamed. The bank president's wife fainted. I sat in my wheelchair watching the chaos with a cold, detached satisfaction. I didn't need to say another word. She had just confessed to attempted murder in front of 50 witnesses, including the sheriff of King County. "I killed the old man for you," she yelled, slapping Travis across the face, leaving bright red welts. "I mixed the powder every morning. I watched him swallow it. I did the dirty work while you planned to run away with some whore." Travis shoved her hard. She stumbled back, tripping on the hem of her gown. She fell heavily onto the marble floor. It was the moment the illusion finally shattered completely. As she hit the ground, the impact jarred the silicone prosthetic strapped to her waist. The strap, already strained by her violent movements, snapped. The fake belly slid sideways, lopsided and absurd, halfway up her ribcage. She lay there panting, her hair wild, her dress torn, the fake pregnancy exposed for the lie it was. She looked up dazed and saw the sea of horrified faces staring down at her. She saw the belly twisted under her dress. She saw Travis bleeding from a scratch on his cheek, and then she looked at me. I was still sitting calmly in the wheelchair, the microphone resting in my lap. I looked down at her, with anger but with pity. She realized then that the camera wasn't the only trap. She realized the whole evening, the whole week had been a stage I built for her to hang herself. "Harrison?" she whispered, her voice trembling. But before she could spin another lie, the double doors at the back of the room burst open. "Police!" a voice boomed. Sheriff Miller strode in, followed by 4 deputies in tactical gear. Dr. Evans was right behind them. The guests parted like the Red Sea, making way for the law. Travis saw them and bolted. He scrambled over the overturned table, heading for the French doors that led to the garden. He didn't care about Melanie. He didn't care about the money. He just wanted to run. He didn't make it 3 steps. Detective Reynolds, who had been posing as one of the catering staff, stepped out from behind the bar. He stuck out a leg, calm as you please. Travis tripped sprawling face first onto the floor with a bone-crunching thud. Before he could scramble up, Reynolds had a knee in his back and was ratcheting his arms behind him. "Stay down," Reynolds barked. Melanie didn't run. She couldn't. She sat on the floor, adjusting her fake belly instinctively, tears of rage and ruin streaming down her face. 2 deputies approached her, pulling her arms behind her back. The click of the handcuffs was the sweetest sound I had ever heard. I stood up from the wheelchair. I pushed the blanket aside and stood tall, my spine straight, my head held high. I walked over to where she sat, looking down at the woman who had shared my bed and tried to end my life. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with hate. "You knew," she spat. "You knew the whole time." "I didn't know the whole time, Brenda," I said, using her real name. "I only knew when you tried to kill the wrong thing." "You should have left my bonsai tree alone." I turned to the sheriff. "Take them away, Jim," I said. "I believe you have a confession recorded on about 50 smartphones right now." As they dragged her out, screaming obscenities, kicking at the air, I felt a weight lift off my chest that I hadn't realized I was carrying. The house was in chaos. The party was ruined. My marriage was over, but I was alive. And for the first time in months, the air in my own home didn't taste like bitter almonds. It tasted like freedom. The ballroom was a cacophony of gasps and whispers, the air thick with the residue of Melanie's screamed confession. She was still on the floor, tangled in the ruins of her emerald gown, her chest heaving as she glared at Travis with the ferocity of a cornered animal. The guests were frozen in a tableau of shock, their champagne glasses forgotten in their hands. They thought the show was over. They thought the revelation of the affair and the murder plot was the finale. But I was just getting started. I placed my hands on the armrests of the wheelchair. I felt the cold metal beneath my palms, the only anchor in a sea of madness. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the stale air of the room. And I pushed. I stood up. It was a slow, deliberate movement, like a king rising from his throne to pass judgment. I straightened my legs, locking my knees, feeling the strength return to muscles I had been forcing to play dead for weeks. I reached down and grabbed the cane resting against the chair. With a sudden violent motion, I kicked it away. It skittered across the marble floor, spinning and clattering until it hit the base of a pillar with a hollow thud. The sound silenced the room instantly. All eyes snapped to me. The frail, trembling invalid was gone. In his place stood Harrison Caldwell, 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, and burning with a cold, righteous fury. I adjusted the cuffs of my suit jacket, smoothing the fabric with a calm precision that terrified them more than any scream could. I looked down at Melanie. She had stopped breathing. Her eyes were wide, fixed on my standing figure as if she were seeing a ghost rise from the grave. Travis, bleeding from his cheek, looked like he was about to vomit. "I am not finished," I announced, my voice booming, without the need for the microphone filling the vaulted ceiling of the hall. "You have heard the confession. Now you will see the evidence." I raised the remote control again and pointed it at the screen. "Video number 2, I said. The screen flickered the image of Travis and his phone call disappearing. It was replaced by a new feed, stark and horrifyingly clear in black and white infrared. It was the master bedroom. It was last night. The guests watched in mesmerized horror as the Melanie on the screen stood before the mirror. They saw her unbutton her blouse. They saw her reach behind her back and unbuckle the heavy support garment. They heard the snap of the release, and then they saw her peel the silicone belly from her body and toss it onto the bench. A collective scream rippled through the crowd. A woman in the front row covered her mouth, retching. The visual confirmation of the fake pregnancy was more visceral, more disturbing than words could ever be. It was a physical violation of their trust, a grotesque mockery of motherhood. But the video did not stop there. It cut to a new angle. The kitchen this morning. The high-definition color footage showed Melanie in her floral apron humming a tune. It zoomed in on her hands. The guests watched as she pulled the packet of white powder from her bra. They saw the fine dust cascading into my blue ceramic bowl. They saw her stir it in a smile playing on her lips. That is arsenic. I narrated, my voice ice cold. Arsenic and warfarin enough to cause a massive brain hemorrhage. She wasn't feeding me. She was executing me. Melanie let out a strangled keen covering her ears, shaking her head back and forth as if trying to deny the reality playing out in 40 high definition above her. "Stop it!" she shrieked. "Turn it off!" I didn't turn it off. I let it play until the moment she poured the soup down the drain, scrubbing away the evidence she thought was gone forever. Then the screen went black. I stepped down from the raised platform where the wheelchair sat. I walked toward Melanie. My steps were steady, heavy, the sound of my dress shoes echoing like the tolling of a funeral bell. The crowd parted for me, shrinking away, giving me a wide berth. I stopped directly in front of her. She was huddled on the floor, trying to pull her torn dress around her, trying to hide the lopsided lump of the prosthetic that had shifted during her attack on Travis. "Please, Harrison," she whimpered, looking up at me, her eyes streaming with black tears. "I can explain." It was him. He made me do it. I didn't say a word. I reached down. I grabbed the neckline of her emerald gown with both hands. "No," she screamed, clutching at my wrists. I pulled. The expensive silk ripped with a sound like tearing skin. I yanked the fabric down, exposing the nude-colored industrial corset underneath. There it was, the silicone belly clinging to her sweat-slicked skin, by a few remaining straps looking absurd and monstrous in the harsh light of the chandeliers. I grabbed the prosthetic with a grip of iron and tore it free. The remaining buckles snapped. I threw it. The silicone mass sailed through the air and hit the marble floor with a wet, heavy slap. It slid a few feet, coming to rest at the feet of the bank president. It lay there, a lifeless, rubbery lie. But that wasn't all. As the belly hit the floor, a hidden compartment on the underside of the silicone tore open. Small, translucent packets spilled out, scattering across the polished stone like confetti. Pills, powders, vials of liquid, her emergency stash, her arsenal. The room stared at the drugs, the poison, the undeniable proof of premeditated murder. "There is your heir," I said, pointing at the heap of rubber and poison. "There is the legacy you wanted to give me." Melanie stared at the pile, her mouth opening and closing, no sound coming out. She was destroyed. The illusion was not just broken, it was pulverized. "Now," I said, turning my back on her. "Sheriff?" The double doors at the back of the room burst open again. This time, Sheriff Miller didn't walk in alone. A dozen officers in tactical gear swarmed the room, their boots thundering on the floor. "Police, everybody down." The command shattered the last of Travis's resolve. He scrambled up from the floor, his eyes wild with panic. He looked at the French doors, then at the kitchen entrance. He bolted toward the kitchen, shoving a waiter aside, desperate to find a rat hole to scurry into. He didn't make it 5 yards. Elias Reynolds, who had been standing quietly by the bar, moved with the speed of a striking cobra. He didn't tackle him. He simply stepped forward and hooked his foot behind Travis's ankle. Travis hit the ground hard, his face slamming into the marble. Before he could draw a breath, Reynolds was on top of him, driving a knee into his spine and wrenching his arms behind his back. "You have the right to remain silent," Reynolds growled, snapping the cuffs on. 2 deputies hauled Melanie up from the floor. She wasn't fighting. She was dead weight, her legs dragging her torn dress hanging off her shoulders. But as the cold metal of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists, reality snapped back into place. She began to scream. It wasn't a scream of fear, it was a scream of pure animalistic rage, a primal howl of a creature that had been trapped. "Let me go," she screeched, thrashing against the officers. "I am Mrs. Caldwell. I own this house. You can't touch me." I watched as they dragged her toward the door. She locked eyes with me one last time. Her face was twisted, ugly, the beauty I had once admired, completely erased by the rot inside her soul. "Harrison," she wailed. "I love you. Please don't let them take me." I walked over to where the deputies were holding her. I stood inches from her face. I looked deep into her eyes, searching for any trace of the woman I thought I knew. There was nothing there, just a void. I leaned in close so only she could hear me over the chaos of the room. "You are a very talented actress." I said, my voice low and steady. "You almost had me. You played the part of the loving wife perfectly." I paused, letting the hope flicker in her eyes for just a second. "But the show is over, Brenda Wah," I whispered, using her real name like a curse. "And the audience is bored." Her eyes widened in shock as she heard her true name. She realized then that I knew everything. I knew about the nursing license. I knew about the fentanyl. I knew about the sterility. I knew exactly who she was. "Get her out of my house," I said to the deputy, straightening up and adjusting my tie. She screamed again, a wordless sound of despair, as they dragged her out into the night, past the stunned guests, past the ruin of her own making. I stood alone in the center of the ballroom, surrounded by the wreckage of the party. The fake belly lay on the floor. The poison was scattered like snow. The guests were silent, staring at me with a mixture of awe and terror. I looked at Dr. Evans, who was standing by the door, nodding slowly. I looked at Reynolds, who was dusting off his hands. I took a glass of champagne from a passing tray that a trembling waiter was still holding. I raised it to the empty room. "To the truth," I said, and for the first time in a long time, the drink didn't taste like bitterness. It tasted like victory. The flashing lights of the police cruisers faded into the night, taking with them the noise, the chaos, and the people who had tried to destroy me. Silence returned to the estate on Mercer Island, but it was not the empty, lonely silence I had feared for so long. It was the silence of a battlefield after the war is won. The air felt cleaner. The shadows in the corners no longer seemed to hide secrets. I stood in the ruined ballroom for a long time, watching the cleaning crew sweep up the shattered glass and the spilled champagne, erasing the physical remnants of the night. My life changed. The legal fallout was swift and brutal. The mountain of evidence I had gathered with Reynolds and the team was insurmountable. There was no way for them to spin it. No lie that could cover the naked truth of the video recordings and the toxicology reports. Melanie, or Brenda, as the court documents named her, did not go quietly. She fought like a trapped animal, screaming her innocence, even as the prosecutors played the tapes of her mixing the poison. When that failed, she tried to blame Travis, claiming he had forced her, that she was a victim of coercive control. But Travis, true to his nature, had no loyalty. To save his own skin, he sang like a bird. He gave the district attorney everything. He detailed the planning, the timeline, the offshore accounts, the forged nursing credentials. He painted a picture of a sociopath who had done this before, though never for such a high price. It didn't save him. The jury took less than 3 hours to deliberate. They were both convicted on charges of attempted first-degree murder conspiracy, grand larceny, and a dozen counts of fraud. The judge, a woman who had no patience for those who prey on the elderly, threw the book at them. They received life sentences without the possibility of parole. The last time I saw Brenda was at the sentencing. She looked at me across the courtroom, her beauty faded, her eyes dead. She didn't scream. She just looked at me with a blank, hollow stare, finally realizing that the old man she underestimated was the one who had locked her away forever. Vince, the lawyer who had tried to facilitate the theft of my legacy, was disbarred within a month. He avoided prison by turning state's witness against other clients he had helped defraud. But his career was over. He would spend the rest of his life looking over his shoulder, a disgrace to his profession. But the victory came with a cost. The human body is resilient, but arsenic is a cruel master. The day after the arrests, I was admitted to the hospital. Dr. Evans oversaw my treatment personally. I spent 2 weeks hooked up to machines undergoing chat therapy to scrub the heavy metals from my blood. It was a painful, exhausting process. There were days when I felt weaker than I ever had during the poisoning days, when my kidneys ached and my head pounded with a relentless rhythm. Dr. Evans sat by my bedside during the worst of it. "You are lucky, Harrison," he told me, reading my chart with a grim expression. "Another week of that soup, maybe even another few days, and the damage to your liver would have been irreversible. You survived by the skin of your teeth." "I survived," I told him, "because I had something to live for. I had a trap to spring. My liver took a hit and my kidneys will need monitoring for the rest of my life. But I recovered." The tremors in my hands faded. The brain fog that had terrified me, the confusion that made me doubt my own sanity, lifted like mist in the morning sun. I got my mind back, and that was the greatest victory of all. When I was discharged, I returned to the mansion on Mercer Island, but only to pack. I could not live there anymore. The walls held too many memories of a lie. Every room reminded me of the performance Melanie had put on the fake smiles, the deadly tea. It was a beautiful house, an architectural triumph. But it was no longer a home. It was a stage set for a tragedy. I put it on the market the following week. It sold in 3 days to a tech billionaire from California who didn't know its history. I didn't care about the price. I just wanted to sign the deed and walk away. I took the few things that mattered, the photos of my first wife, Elizabeth, my drafting tools, my books, and I left the rest behind. I wanted a clean slate. 6 months have passed since that night. The Seattle summer has arrived, turning the gray skies into a brilliant, piercing blue. I am no longer on land. I bought a yacht, a sleek 60-footer that I named the Phoenix. It seemed appropriate. I wanted to be on the water, moving free from foundations and walls. I'm sitting on the aft deck now, a cup of real coffee in my hand, watching the city skyline glitter in the distance. The Space Needle stands tall against the horizon, a needle threading the clouds. The wind is cool on my face, carrying the scent of salt and freedom. I am 72 years old, but I feel younger than I have in decades. I pick up my phone. For a long time, this device was a tool of my isolation, a way for Melanie to monitor me and cut me off from the world. Now it is my lifeline. I scroll to a number I haven't dialed in 3 years, Michael, my nephew. Melanie had driven a wedge between us early on. She told me Michael was only after my money. She told Michael that I had become bitter and didn't want to see him. She isolated me so completely that I believed my own family had abandoned me. But during the investigation, Reynolds found the letters Michael had sent me. Letters Melanie had intercepted and hidden in the attic. Letters asking how I was. Letters begging to visit. Letters full of love and concern. I pressed the call button. The ringtone sounds in my ear, a hopeful rhythm. "Hello." A voice answers, hesitant, unsure. "Michael." I say, my voice steady and strong. "It is Uncle Harrison." There is a silence on the other end, then a sharp intake of breath. "Uncle Harry, is that really you? I read about the trial. I tried to call, but I didn't know if it is me, son." I say, smiling at the horizon. "It is really me. I am back, and I am so sorry for everything." We talk for an hour. We talk about nothing and everything. I invite him to the yacht for the weekend. He accepts without hesitation. I can hear the relief in his voice, the genuine affection that no amount of money can buy. I realize that I am not alone. I never was. I was just blinded. I hang up the phone and lean back in the deck chair. The sun is setting, painting the water in shades of gold and violet. I take a sip of my coffee. It is rich and dark, with no trace of bitter almonds. People tell you that loneliness is the thing that kills the elderly. They say we fade away because there is no one there to speak to us. They are wrong. Loneliness is painful. Yes, it is cold. But it is honest. What kills you is the wrong company. What kills you is opening your door to a vampire because you are afraid of the dark. What kills you is letting your desire for love silence your instinct for survival. I was almost a statistic. I was almost a cautionary tale in a newspaper clipping about elder abuse. But I woke up. I looked at the ultrasound screen, and I chose to see the truth instead of the beautiful lie. I am Harrison Caldwell. I am 72 years old. I have lost a wife, a home, and a part of my health. But as I look out at the vast open ocean, I realize I have regained something far more valuable. I have found myself again. I have my dignity. I have my family back. And the best part is the rest of my life belongs to me. Not to a predator, not to a ghost, but to me. And looking at this sunset, I have to say life is still beautiful. Very beautiful indeed. I want to leave you with a lesson I learned in the hardest way possible. We often ignore the red flags because we are starving for connection. We dismiss the small inconsistencies, the gut feelings, and the doubts because the illusion of happiness is so seductive. But your intuition is your oldest survival mechanism. It knew something was wrong long before my brain accepted it. If something feels off, if the story does not add up, do not be afraid to look closer. Do not be afraid to ask the hard questions. True love does not hide in the shadows, and it certainly does not taste like poison. Protect your heart, but protect your life first. If my story moved you, or if you have ever had to fight to reclaim your life from someone who tried to take it, please like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories of truth and survival. Until next time, stay safe and trust your instincts.